Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So in today's tutorial, we're going to continue with our introduction to game development using Python programming language, using Pygame specifically. So we're going to be using a Pygame to develop a simple space invader game or space invader game. Display a spacecraft that can shoot down a bunch of alien crafts and get points as it shoot down the crafts. So that's what we have been trying to build, and this is video number 6. We're going to be going ahead and adding the enemies to the screen. So if you're new to the channel, please kindly consider subscribing to the video, liking this subscribing to the YouTube channel, liking the video, and then sharing this content with anyone who you think might find this helpful. Okay, so let's get started with it. So the first thing we need to go ahead and do is actually get an image that we can use for our enemy. So you can just go to Flaticon, or you can go to pixel.com and then simply get an image right there. Get a spacecraft image. Okay, so I got mine from Pixel, and then make sure that the dimensions are 900 by 600 pixels image, or you can even go to Flaticon and just try to find any alien image. Make sure that it's around 900 by 600 pixel image, or is that, I think it's around 64, sorry, not 900 by 600 rather. So this is actually an error right here. It's actually supposed to be 64 by 64 image. Okay, so a pixel image. So you can go to Flaticon and then find an image of a space of an alien craft, and make sure that its dimensions are 64 by 64 pixel image. My bad, this actually made a value wrong here. So we're going to use these dimensions later on, but I'll explain to you. I think I made an error when I was creating these slides. Okay, so sorry for that. Make sure that your image is 64 by 64 pixel image. Okay, so you can just go to flaticon.com and get an alien craft image of 64 by 64 image. Okay, so I hope that's clear and I'm not repeating myself over and over again. Okay, so I hope that you have that image, and if you don't have the image, you can find it on my GitHub page, and the link is gonna be in the description below. Okay, so let me just go ahead and simply get that image that you're going to be going ahead and using, and this is going to be the alien craft. Is going to be this one right. I'm just going to go ahead and copy it, go back to my desktop, go in here, go into tutorials, and I'm going to space invader, and then I'm going to assets, and then simply paste it in here. So you can see now I have that image right here, which is just called ufo.png, and if I open it up from here, you can see we have that ufo.png image. Okay, so once we have it, what I want to go ahead and do is simply load that image. So I'm just going to go let me just scroll up here, and I'm just going to keep it up here where we loaded the previous image. So this is going to be load enemy, so enemy image, just like this. So we're going to say enemy, so enemy enemy underscore image, and this is going to be pygame image dot load, and then simply say dot / assets assets / this is going to be enemy, and then dot sorry, I called it ufo.png, so it's going to be ufo.png, just like that. So once I have that sorry for that, once I have that specified right there, I also want to go ahead and specify the x and the y value for our enemy. So the x and the y value, I can just say enemy enemy. So I'm going to say enemy, and enemy x is just going to be using 450. Let's get this 400, and then enemy enemy y should be let's say enemy y is around let's see, what should we use for this y value? We can just say let's say 170. Okay, let's say 170 for the y. Okay, later we'll come back and we'll change these values in a second, so don't worry, I'll explain all that to you. So I'm going to say also this is going to be changed in underscore x underscore enemy x position underscore enemy for the enemy, so enemy, just like that. And change the x position for the enemy, I'm just going to be leaving it to be 0.4 for now. You can play around with these values as long as you ask, so that the game you like the movements of the game, that the speed is not too fast or too much, but for now just leave it to be 0.4. We'll come back to all of these values and why I set them just in a second. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and write another function that is going to go ahead and blitz the enemy to the screen, just like we have it right here. So you can simply go ahead and simply copy it from here, and then use the same, but I can just go ahead and simply type it. So I'm going to say def enemy it's going to say enemy y, and then enemies y position. So enemies x position and enemies y position is I'm going to do screen dot bleed. You're going to bleed the image to the screen, which will be enemy image, and you're going to simply pass in a tuple, which is going to be the coordinates, which will be enemy x, and enemy y, just like an enemy y. So enemy y, just like that. So we have enemy x and enemy y. So once I have these values right here, I can go ahead and simply call this function that is going to go ahead and draw the enemy on the screen. So I want this to be persistent, so I'm going to put it inside of the main while loop. We explained that everything that you want to be persistent, then keep it inside of the main while loop. So I'm going to go here and say player, so it's going to be enemy image display, just like that. We have the player one, so we're going to say enemy enemy, and then simply pass in the enemy y, enemy x, and enemy y, y value. So there we have enemy x and enemy y. So once we have this, I'm just going to go ahead and simply run my code again, and now you can see we have the enemy right there. The enemy is right here. Okay, now the enemy is not moving because I want the enemy to move around, and also the enemy is not responding. Whenever I shoot the enemy, you see the enemy, nothing happens. So we're going to solve all that in upcoming videos. So now what I want to go ahead and do is that I want to make the enemy be moving from left and right to the screen, moving from left to right of the screen. Okay, so first of all, let's get it to move in one direction. So I'm just go back to the VS Code. Let's get our enemy just to move in one specific direction, and to do that, I'm just going to go above here, and I can keep it right here. Let me see, I can keep it right here, just above here. So this is going to be let me just say that this is going to be enemy this is going to be the enemy movement. So enemy movement. Okay, so I'm going to say enemy enemy, and then get the enemy's x position. So enemy's x position is going to be equals to the change in the enemy x position, right? So we're going to say enemy x position, sorry, it's going to be plus equals to the change in the enemy's x position. In this case, the enemy's x position is just going to continuously increase, right? So let's run the code and let's see what we have. So if I run the code, and you can see the enemy is just moving towards the right of the screen, and it gets out of the screen. So how do we make sure that it doesn't move right of the screen? Once it hits the edge of the screen, I want it to move in the other direction. So once it hits here, I want it to start moving in the opposite direction, but now it just goes all the way, okay, all the way to the end of this, out of the screen. So to do that, we have to simply check set some boundaries for the enemy, so here you can go ahead and simply say enemy boundary, okay, screen, and just say screen boundaries, okay, just like that. So what you're going to check, we're going to check if enemy the x position of the enemy, if it is less or equals to 0, right, means the enemy position is either left less or equals to 0. What you want to do, I want to say change in the enemy's position, enemy's x position is going to be equals to 0.4, and the reason why it's 0.4 is that we want to be able to add to it, because if it's less or equals to 0, means that is that we want to move towards the right direction. So that's why we're adding to it, and we're going to also check if it's in the left direction. I'm going to do that just in a second, and I'm going to simply say if, right, the enemy x position is greater sorry, let me just say is greater or equals to I'm going to say 835, and I explain why we are using this value of 835. And 835 is we get it from 900, which is the width of our screen, minus 64, which is going to be the image, the image pixels, right? It's a 64 by 64 image, right? Remember that. So that's what we're going to get. That's how we get the 836. Okay, so that's where we're going to get 836. That's where we're getting the value 836 from. So it's going to take the width of the screen minus the width of the image, and that's going to be 836. Okay, so that's going to make sure that the enemy x position does not exceed this value. So what we're going to simply go ahead and do, once it hits that 836, what we're going to do, start doing is starting to move it towards the left, because that's reached the far most right that we allow it to. So now it needs to start moving towards the right or the left of the screen. So to do that, you're going to simply say copy the enemy's x position, but now it's going to be a negative value. So it's going to be negative 0.4. In case that when we come to add it here, it's going to be a minusing of the enemy's x position instead of adding to it. So here we're going to simply go ahead and add it, but here we're going to go ahead and remove it whenever we come to this line right here. So that's why we're setting the values to be either positive here and the negative value here. Okay, good. So once we have that, let's go ahead and run the code, and let's see what we have so far. So let's hopefully it is right and then goes into the right direction. Good. So once that works as we expect it, right? So great. So what I want to go ahead and do is I also want to make sure that the enemy's y position is also random and not just any static just being on this line. I want it to be random value and not just on y. So the enemy should continuously move downwards as time goes, and should be also be able to change the change in also the y. It cannot just be on this line. It can be here, here, here. The enemy can spawn in different places instead of just one spot. Okay, so now let's go ahead and actually do that. And to do that, I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to go ahead and change the here. So I'm going to simply say random. I need to import random. So go up above of your code and just also import random, just like that. So so once you can use the random library that is imported. So it's random.rand int, and you're going to use we're going to specify between 64 and 64. So let me say 64 comma 83836. Okay, and 836 is the maximum value it can go towards the right, and x64 is actually the lowest value, which is actually the pixel the size of that image. So I'm just going to go ahead and simply copy this and also paste it for the y. Okay, so paste it here as well, and then I'll have that there. So yeah, that's basically it. But now for the y, I want to change this to be 168. So these values are just values that you can play around with. They're just parameters you can tweak later on to choose the values that work for you. Okay, so for me it's going to be between 64 to 836, and then for the y is going to be between 64 and 168 basically. Yes, that's what I want to do. So once I have these values will be randomly generated. So now let's run the code again. So that will make sure that the player does not spawn in one specific area all the time. So if I run, maybe this time we'll get at a different location. You can see now it's a bit above. So yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to implement. The position of the player should change depending on it should be random, not just any static value. So that's what I'm trying to implement. Yeah, so it's difficult to detect this changing, but yeah. So once I have this done, I also want to go ahead and also change the values right here. So once we either make our player move in the left or the right, we also want to go ahead and change its x and y values. So I'm going to say here enemy we're going to say enemy y. So enemy y is going to be equals to random.randit. So I'm just going to paste what I copied. So random.randit, and it's going to be these values right here. So it's going to be between yeah, that's basically it. So enemy y is going to be plus or equals to these values right here. So it's going to be between 0 and 68. So I'm going to change this to be between 0 and 68. So I'm going to just say 68, and then also here I want to copy the same values and repeat it down here as well. So paste it here as well, paste it here, and random values between 1 and 60, or I think you can use 68 also here. It's fine. Yeah, so that's basically it. So once we have that done, everything should be as expected. So let's go ahead and actually run the code again and run the code. So now you can see it works like that. So yeah, so that every time the player drops a bit down, and that's what that code does. The player drops a bit down, so that we, once the player hits this, once the alien craft crashes with this the spaceship, then the spaceship dies. The game is over, right? So that's why I continuously drop it by a given value. We continuously drop it, and drop it as we go along. Yeah, that's basically what you are trying to do right there. Yeah, so that's basically it for. Let me just go ahead and show you if there's anything I need to explain to you furthermore. You can let me know in the comment section below, but this is basically what we want to do. Basically just increasing the y value each time by a random value. We don't want to constantly be going down with a constant value. We just want to use a random value. So yeah, that's what you're trying to do. It's just increasing the y value as time goes by. And if you are confused, you can always go back and look at the graph, this graph right here. We always say that the y increases as we go downwards in terms of the screen, right? So 0 is up here, and then y increases as you have to go in the downward direction. And to go in the downward direction, that's why we're going to go ahead and simply generate a random number between 0 and 68, and then simply add it to it to make sure that we move down. Okay, yeah, that's basically it. So once it hits the left, right, this is going to be once this is going to be as long as it touches the the left of the screen. You're going to make sure now start moving it towards the right of the screen, and also decreasing its y value. If it hits the right most of the screen, you're going to go ahead and decrease its the x value, so that you can start moving towards the left of the screen, and let's also change its y value to go down, right? So that's basically it. for this tutorial. So you can see now we have our alien our spaceship and our alien craft all working as we expect it to. So right now we need to be able to detect collision and then be able to give scores and all that. So you can see right now the alien is not dying as we shoot it down. So we now need to go ahead and add values to it so the alien can actually be shot down. Okay, so yeah, so that's what we're going to be covering in the next video. Let me just see what we're going to cover. Yeah, so in the next video we're going to be going ahead and covering collision detection. Whenever I shoot down a bullet and the bullet touches the spacecraft, how do I know that it has actually touched it? That's why collision detection. And if it has detected a collision between the bullet and the alien aircraft, then we can go ahead and increment the values for the winner, and then also decide to take the enemy down because that's been shot down, right? So that's what we're going to be doing in the next tutorial for that. Okay, so thanks for watching, and see you in the next one. Keep safe.